On February 12, 1983, northern Alaska, the thermometer read -38 when we rolled out of Fort Wayne before sunrise. 6 trucks in convoy, engines howling against the frozen dark, each one burdened with fuel drums, ration crates, and 2 snow machines lashed tight under stiff tarps. The orders called it a signal recovery exercise. Arctic training zone, 48 hours, standard deployment, but the air inside every cab said otherwise. No one believed we were on a drill. The lead truck carried a portable receiver sealed in a shock-proof case, tuned to a pulse that didn't belong to our century. It was an old beacon tone, a World War II emergency frequency, the kind used by Lend-Lease aircraft shuttling through Fairbanks toward Siberia in the 40s. The strange part wasn't its origin, but the fact it had come alive again after 40 years of silence, beating out a pattern of static that rose and fell like something breathing through the wires. The signal came from deep within the Brooks Range, a blank stretch of ice and stone marked on our maps only as BP3. Satellites showed nothing there. No wreckage, no power, no heat, just white void. We were to reach it, recover whatever broadcast it, and wait for pickup. Simple, in writing. Out here, simplicity froze quick. By the 3rd day, the windshields were ghosted over with frost from our own breath, and the compasses wandered like drunks. The tone on the receiver had begun to shift, no longer the crisp Morse-style ping of a beacon, but something irregular, almost organic. My team was small, a SIGINT detachment trained for Arctic ops, usually glued to antennas and cipher sheets far from the front line. This mission came by courier, printed on thick stock with no sender name, only a reference code JTF-OT/relic. During debriefs, they'd later rename it Echo Recovery, as if new words could bleach its record. We were 8 on paper, 6 soldiers, 1 captain, and 2 civilian technicians from an Air Force research branch out of Eielson. 1 man stayed behind with the rear element, leaving 7 to move forward. Only 5 would reach the valley when terrain split us. Officially, we chased a stray training beacon, reactivated by weather. Captain Harlan never bought that story, and neither did I. NORAD had logged the signal first, 13 minutes of transmission, 4 hours of dead air, then 13 again. Coordinates mapped to a valley roughly 180 miles north of Fairbanks, a restricted sector since 1956 due to magnetic instability. That kind of phrasing usually meant classified crash site. We left at dawn. The trucks were loaded for 72 hours of field work. Diesel heaters, collapsible tents, antennas, rations, small arms. The light stayed low and cruel, the kind that flattens the world into shades of silver. Harlan briefed us over the idling engines. Priority is the source, no secondaries. If it's man-made, we recover. If natural, we record and tag. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. The civilians, Miller and Cohen, kept to themselves. They handled sealed aluminum cases and avoided small talk. One wore an insignia I'd never seen before, a circle enclosing a triangle stitched in dull gray thread. The road north cut through a wilderness that felt older than language. Snow drifted in slow waves over the asphalt. The sun hovered like a half-lit coin that never rose. At mile marker 120, a guard at the final checkpoint signed our manifest, then leaned close to Harlan's window. "There's nothing up there," he muttered, "just ice and old stories." He wasn't wrong. During the 40s, this region had served as a staging route for the Lend-Lease program, hundreds of planes hopping from Montana to Fairbanks to Siberia. Many vanished into storms or mountainsides. After 1950, the routes closed and time buried the rest. By nightfall, the temperature fell again. Our heater coughed once and quit, leaving the cab a metal coffin lined with frost. We rode in silence while static whispered from the radio. Every few hours, the tone returned. Short bursts, mechanical, precise. According to the text, its signature matched a 1951 Gibson Girl survival transmitter. But this one had been modified beyond recognition. Extra circuits, soldered modules, capacity for data relay. Someone had rebuilt it long after its era. Harlan logged each pulse by hand, muttering bearings under his breath. I saw his glove tremble once, not from cold. We bivouacked beside a frozen creek where the starlight bounced off the snow until the horizon vanished. I stepped away from the trucks, stretching numb legs, and caught the faint buzz of the open receiver. The tone wasn't alone anymore. Between pulses came a fragile murmur. 3 syllables repeated, then silence. Miller called it compression echo, an artifact of signal decay. But I'd lived in radio rooms long enough to know cadence when I heard it. Someone or something was speaking through the noise. We logged it, then pushed on at first light. The trail narrowed into frozen spruce. One truck buried itself twice, forcing us to dig it free. Transmissions grew more frequent, every 90 minutes now. Same rhythm, same delay. By day 3, the map said we were 20 miles from target. The valley ahead showed no structures, no power, only frozen tundra and wind. That night, the signal spiked across multiple bands. Even the civilians looked uneasy. Through the static came that soft, ragged breathing again, so vivid it made every man glance toward the speaker, as if expecting a face to form from sound. Harlan met my eyes and said, low and flat, "Tomorrow we find it." At dawn, we left the road and entered open ground. The trucks couldn't make the climb, so 2 remained behind as a base camp. The rest of us pressed forward with sleds and snow machines, light gear, rations, rifles. The air bit through masks. Breath froze to cloth within minutes. Midday found us on a lake so still, it looked like glass under the clouds. Across it stood a row of weather-blackened poles curving toward the horizon, runway markers from another war. Harlan halted the convoy. The map showed no trace of them. Miller unpacked his receiver, extended the antenna, and powered on. Instantly, the tones screamed through the speaker, full strength, needle against the stop. "It's here," he said. "We're right on top of it." We drilled through 8 feet of ice, thinking the source was trapped metal or a beacon sunk beneath. The auger hit something solid, and the sound rolled outward like a heartbeat trapped in ice. Harlan's face drained of color. "We're not camping here," he said. We retreated to the ridge beyond the lake and pitched tents among the pines. The signal followed us, steady, relentless, ignoring our attempts to shield it in foil. Cohen started analyzing the waveform, muttering about microbursts hidden in the tone, data packets in an obsolete cipher. None of it should have worked, yet it did, looping forever without loss. 2 nights we endured that rhythm. On the second, at 0200, the beacon died. For 4 minutes there was only silence. Then it returned, now laced with a hiss like wind passing through a tunnel. Moments later, our generator froze despite the insulation. Even fuel turned to wax in that cold. I remember standing by the hood, hands over the block's weak warmth, when I noticed the compass needle jerk and spin before locking hard east. That was when Harlan gave the order. At dawn, we'd go the rest of the way on snow machines. No more trucks, no more delays. The valley was waiting. We dismounted and advanced on foot, rifles slung, boots sinking to the knee. The wind had dropped to nothing, leaving only the squeak of snow and the faint ticking of Miller's Geiger counter. The metallic shapes grew clearer, wings, fuselage curves, torn seams along the ice. A plane lay half buried in the valley floor, painted in faded olive drab, the skin blistered from decades of cold. Miller brushed the frost from the nearest panel. The letters US appeared, then a tail number, 52148. He called it out. Cohen checked his manifest book and frowned. No record, no aircraft listed under that serial, not in Army, Air Force, or civil logs. It was as if this thing had never existed. Harlan's face stayed expressionless. "Mark the grid," he ordered. "We'll start the inspection at first light." We set camp at the ridge above the wreck. No one spoke much over dinner, just the quiet clatter of spoons on tins, the rhythmic pulse of the beacon that refused to fade. The signal remained as strong as ever, undisturbed by terrain or weather. Cohen tried to jam it with a mesh of foil and grounding wire. The pulse kept bleeding through like a heartbeat under a bandage. When I asked him what he thought it was, he said, "Not natural. Something built it to last." He looked pale in the lantern glow, his breath shaking. Around 300, the receiver went silent again. We all froze, waiting. 4 minutes later, it returned, but changed. The clean tone was gone, replaced by a hiss layered with faint whispering, like air drawn through hollow metal. Miller swore he heard words in it, the same pattern as before. 3 syllables, pause, repeat. He logged it while the rest of us checked the generator, only to find the fuel line solid with ice. No reason it should have frozen. We'd kept it wrapped and heated. Still, it was dead. I remember that quiet, the kind that feels heavier than noise. Even the trees refused to move. When I looked at the compass on the truck dash, the needle spun once, then locked east again, unwavering. That was enough for Harlan. "We move on foot," he said. "No wheels from here." By noon, we reached the crash site. The plane was tilted on its side, half entombed in ice. The tail had sheared off, the fuselage twisted and burned along the belly, as if scorched from within. Snow filled the gaps like plaster in a wound. We circled it slowly, documenting each section. The cockpit windows were shattered inward, instruments frozen mid-spin. When my flashlight swept across the glass, I saw dials locked halfway between readings. Altitude, fuel, pressure, all stopped at once. No seats left, only metal frames and rusted harness clips. The air smelled faintly of oil even after 40 years, sharp and clean, like something preserved. Inside the cargo bay, we found crates stacked tight against the walls. Their stencils were half erased, but I could still make out property of U.S. Army Air Forces, 1952. Not 1940s, 1952. Wrong decade for a Lend-Lease run. Cohen found the beacon bolted near the rear bulkhead. A Gibson Girl transmitter, heavily modified. Extra wires fed into new modules welded by hand. Despite the cold, the metal was warm under his glove. "It's active," he whispered. Harlan crouched beside him, eyes narrow. "Don't disconnect it. Photograph and log everything. We'll need it intact." Miller confirmed through the portable receiver that the signal was still broadcasting, meaning what we stood beside wasn't merely sending, it was relaying. Something else was feeding it. Miller traced the main antenna line under the ice and froze mid-motion. "It keeps going," he said. We cleared the frost and found a sealed metal hatch beneath the fuselage, its bolts fused tight with corrosion. No markings, no serial. Harlan said we'd come back with heaters to open it once light returned. For now, we gathered data. In the cockpit, I found a checklist still clipped to the console. The last line read, "Beacon synchronized. Awaiting command uplink. No distress call. No coordinates. No crew names." It felt like we were reading the start of something, not the end. Night fell fast. The wind picked up, whining across the ice like distant machinery. In the receiver tent, the signal shifted again. This time, a voice. Calm, male, clipped. "Checklist complete. Awaiting command," then silence. The tape spun for another 10 seconds before Miller stopped it. None of us spoke. Harlan stared at the recorder as though waiting for it to speak again. "That aircraft isn't empty," he said finally. "We move in at dawn." The sun rose pale and flat, more glow than light. The fuselage shimmered under frost, the tail number glinting through like a wound reopening. We loaded rifles, slung the Geiger counter, and advanced. The snow cracked underfoot. Inside, the air felt thicker, denser, as if sound moved slower. The radiation meter ticked higher near the nose. Nothing lethal, but unnatural for a dead plane. Miller whispered readings while Cohen adjusted his recorder, and Harlan moved ahead into the cockpit. "Document everything," he said. I followed him, flashlight trembling in my grip. Frost covered the panels in uneven sheets. Behind them, the gauges glowed faintly, light bleeding from nowhere. "Power residual?" Cohen asked. Harlan shook his head. "No power left in here," but the glow didn't fade. We found the beacon again, still pulsing, still warm. Cohen tapped its casing with a wrench. "Whatever's running, this isn't battery," he muttered. "It's feeding off something else." Harlan said nothing. He turned once toward the frozen horizon outside, where the wind had dropped away again, and I saw that same unease flicker through his face. That night, we'd confirmed through the receiver that the beacon was transmitting even as we stood over it, which meant it wasn't just here, it was somewhere else too. And wherever there was, it was still listening. The storm rolled in just before nightfall, sweeping down from the northern ridges in white sheets that erased the horizon. The tents shook under the wind, canvas popping like gunfire, and the temperature plummeted to 40 below. Snow drifted against the aircraft's broken fuselage until it vanished under a smooth crust. We worked by headlamp and lantern, our breath forming halos in the dark. Harlan posted 2-man watches in rotating shifts, while the rest of us huddled near the generator for heat. The beacon tone kept pulsing through the receiver, steady and patient, unaffected by the weather, as if the storm didn't exist for it. Around 200, I was on guard when the signal changed again. One long tone that stretched thin, then fractured into 2 sharp bursts. Between them, a whisper came through. "Altitude! Hold!" The words were soft but unmistakable. I called Miller out of his sleeping bag, and he stumbled to the tent half asleep, recorder already running. He listened, wrote something in his notebook, and muttered, "That's not a transmission. It's a command input." I stared at him. "Input for what?" He shook his head slowly. "Something that's still waiting for a reply." At dawn, the wind calmed enough for visibility. The wreck had turned into a frozen sculpture. Snow fused over its frame. Cohen checked the beacon's temperature. Still 20 degrees Celsius inside the casing, warm as a living thing. That decided it. Harlan announced we'd opened the sealed hatch we found the day before. "We came here for the source," he said. "We finish it." We used a thermal rod to melt the ice around the bolts until steam hissed from the metal. When the last one cracked loose, a faint current of warm air escaped from below. It smelled like burnt ozone and chemicals, dry, artificial. Inside was a small chamber lined with black insulation and a single box no larger than a field radio. Its surface was matte, etched with the same triangle and circle emblem stitched on Miller's jacket. Nobody spoke. Harlan crouched, flashlight trembling slightly, and said, "Photograph it." "Then remove it carefully." Miller lifted the box, and the beacon tone cut out mid-pulse. The silence that followed was total. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. "That's it," Harlan said softly. "Whatever was transmitting just stopped." We sealed the find inside an insulated crate and hauled it back to camp. The signal didn't return, not on any frequency. The receivers hissed blank static all night. The next morning, the valley was so quiet it felt hollow. We packed up and began the slow retreat toward the trucks, sleds creaking under weight. Halfway across the ice, Cohen stopped. His headset was on, and I saw his face go slack. "It's back," he whispered. We gathered around as he turned up the volume. The speaker emitted the same voice as before, faint but clear. "Checklist complete." Awaiting command, Miller stared at the crate like it might answer. "It's not coming from the wreck anymore," he said. "It's here, with us." We made it to the base trucks by late afternoon. The two men guarding them looked half frozen but alive. They reported no signals, no radio traffic, nothing unusual. Whatever this was, it stayed confined to our equipment. We loaded the crate into the lead vehicle, wrapped it in canvas, and marked it for restricted transport. Before we left, I took one last look at the valley. The wind had cleared the snow from the plane's nose, exposing the cockpit windows. For a second, I thought I saw light flicker inside. Just a reflection, maybe, but it lingered long enough to make my stomach drop. Then it was gone. Harlan called us to mount up. We started the convoy south under a sky as white as ash. An hour later, Miller leaned forward in the passenger seat, headset pressed tight. "It's transmitting again," he said. Harlan turned, eyes hard. "From where?" Miller hesitated, adjusting the dials. "From inside one of our trucks." Harlan ordered every radio shut off, every power line disconnected. The tone kept playing, faint through the cabin speakers even with no current flowing. It wasn't a signal anymore. It was something imprinted, burned into the circuits themselves. None of us spoke the rest of the way. We reached Fort Wayne 36 hours later. The trucks were entombed in salt ice, engines barely ticking. On the runway waited a team we didn't recognize. No unit badges, no names. They signed nothing, spoke even less, and took the crate straight into a hangar that locked behind them. The rest of us went through debrief, medical checks, frostbite treatment, equipment inspection. Standard Arctic protocol, they called it. But the officers who questioned us didn't wear our insignia. One of them referred to the mission as Echo Recovery. That was the first time we heard that name spoken aloud. Harlan spent 4 hours in closed interview. When he came out, he looked years older. "Separate reports," he told us. "After that, you say nothing to anyone outside this unit." His tone left no room for questions. We thought it was over, but it wasn't. 2 days later, I went to the communications lab to review our recordings. The tapes were still labeled by date and time, but the data inside had changed. Each file began with the beacon's tone, followed by voices, our own but wrong. I heard myself giving weather updates I never made, Harlan issuing orders we never spoke, Miller asking for range corrections that never happened. Every clip ended with the same phrase in that same calm voice. "Checklist complete, awaiting command." I took the tapes to Harlan. He listened without expression, then shut them off and said, "Erase them. They're not our concern anymore," but his hands shook as he handed them back. That night I found Miller outside the barracks smoking barehanded in the cold. He said the engineers had opened the crate that morning. It wasn't a radio, he told me. It was a storage unit, 30 magnetic wire reels, each tagged with coordinates and dates between 1951 and 1953. One of those reels, he said, bore our mission's exact grid, recorded decades before we arrived. The signal we chased, he whispered, was transmitting from the past. I didn't want to believe him, but something in his voice made me sick. He said they tried to play one reel. The same voice spoke through it, same pattern, same tone, crystal clear. Then the lab's power cut out for 20 minutes. When it came back, every tape was blank, erased clean. Miller was gone the next morning. His bunk stripped, his locker emptied, no discharge papers filed. Harlan said he'd been reassigned, but nobody believed that. 2 days later, security officers collected our notebooks, cameras, even field maps. I'd hidden one page in my jacket, the coordinates written in pencil. I told myself it was for closure, but I think I just needed proof that it happened. The official line was that echo recovery never took place, but I could still hear the pulse of that tone in my dreams, looping under the static. 3 beats, pause, repeat, always waiting for something to answer. It was March before they called me back. The snow hadn't stopped falling since the first mission, and by then I'd convinced myself the entire operation would be sealed away forever, filed under some forgotten code. Then one morning a runner delivered an envelope stamped immediate recall, JTF North. Inside were coordinates and a single line, reactivation confirmed. No explanation. I arrived at Fort Wayne before dawn. The base looked half deserted, the hangars locked, snow burying vehicles to their mirrors. Inside the operations tent, the air smelled of kerosene and coffee gone stale. Harlan was already there. He looked different, thinner, eyes sunken, hair gray around the temples. But the way he stood was the same, rigid, cautious, like a man braced for another blow. "It's active again," he said before I could speak. "Stronger this time." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were frequency charts and waveform prints identical to the ones we'd logged months earlier. Only now the amplitude was triple. Bursts of speech layered in 6-hour intervals. Always the same phrases. Altitude hold. Cabin secure. Checklist complete. The source was the same valley we'd buried under ice. Nothing had survived there. Yet somehow it was speaking again. We left that afternoon. 2 track vehicles, a small drone, minimal personnel, 5 of us total. The same route north through frozen emptiness. The markers we'd placed before were gone, swallowed by storms or time. Even the road felt alien, buried under new snow like a different country. Silence pressed in around us, thicker than the cold itself. The engines sounded distant, as if the air dampened them. When we reached the ridge overlooking the valley, I knew immediately something had changed. The wreck was visible again, but it wasn't resting the way we'd left it. The nose had lifted, tilted slightly upward, and the snow around it had melted into perfect circles, frozen later into glassy rings. Cohen, who joined us again from Eielson, stared through binoculars. "That heat signature shouldn't exist," he murmured. The drone confirmed faint thermal traces beneath the fuselage. Harlan said, "Residual power." The techs exchanged looks. "Impossible," one muttered. Harlan didn't argue. He simply said, "We're going in." The descent felt longer this time. The air was utterly still. No wind, no noise, but the crunch of boots. Frost crystals clung to every branch, reflecting the faint light like shattered mirrors. Up close, the wreck looked almost new. The olive paint scrubbed clean by weather or something else. Even the tail numbers had been wiped clear and re-etched, crisp as if carved yesterday. 52148. I felt my stomach twist. Harlan approached first, rifle slung low, breathing fogging his mask. The beacon mount was still there, and its indicator lights blinked weakly through frost. Miller was gone, but his notes had mentioned how the tone behaved like a living pulse. Standing there, I believed him. The signal hummed through the handheld receiver, constant and unwavering. But beneath the rhythm was another layer, a slow, mechanical thump that almost sounded like a heartbeat buried in static. We moved around to the tail section, where the buried hatch had been. The cover lay open, frost crawling across its edges. Inside the compartment, the box was gone. Only an empty cavity remained. The insulation was peeled back, as if pried open from within. One of the tech officers climbed into the fuselage to trace wiring. A minute later, he called out, "You need to see this." I followed him inside. The air smelled metallic and hot, like burned film. The cockpit panels were flickering, not dead, not bright, just pulsing with faint light as though something deep inside the circuits refused to die. "No power feed," Cohen said, checking the meter. "No batteries, no generator." Harlan said, "Then what's keeping it alive?" None of us had an answer. I leaned closer to one of the dials. The glass was warm under my glove. Then the radio on the console crackled to life. No one had touched it. The mic clicked twice. Through the static came that same voice, measured, steady, inhumanly calm. Altitude hold, cabin secure, checklist complete. The words vibrated in the metal like it was speaking through the frame itself. Harlan's radio hissed in response. "Copy that transmission," he said automatically. I answered. "Confirmed," came from cockpit. His voice came back. "We're not transmitting." The mic clicked again, and then, in the same tone, the same cadence, the voice repeated Harlan's last sentence, word for word. The same timbre, same hesitation, perfect mimicry. We froze. Even Cohen stopped breathing for a second. I stepped outside for clearer reception. The valley was dead quiet, the air thin and colorless. Through the headset, I heard our voices echoing, everything we'd said for the past few minutes, layered back at us in perfect delay. It was recording and replaying in real time. Harlan's order came through the comm. Power down everything. We shut off radios, disconnected batteries, killed recorders. The tone didn't fade. It kept pulsing faintly through the snow itself, audible even without speakers, as though the ground had become a transmitter. The intelligence officer, a man whose name I still can't recall, spoke finally. "We've confirmed the anomaly," he said. "Recommend immediate withdrawal." Harlan shook his head. "Something under that wreck is still transmitting. If we don't neutralize it, someone else will." His voice was calm but hard, the kind of calm that meant fear had already turned into purpose. He was right. If the signal could leap once, it could leap again, spreading through comm lines, through relay networks, through anything that could carry current. We couldn't let it survive. The plan was simple. Set charges, collapse the fuselage, and bury the wreck for good. While we worked, the medic monitored the scanners from the ridge. At 1740 hours, he reported something new. A second ping, same frequency, 30 kilometers east. The beacon had multiplied. Harlan didn't hesitate. "We finish this one first," he said. "Then we find the next." The air had that brittle stillness before a storm. I threaded detonation cord through the cockpit beams, my fingers numb even through gloves. As I stepped back, I glanced once at the instrument panel. The altimeter was moving, slowly climbing, reading 4,000 feet. We hadn't touched it. "It's reacting," Cohen said quietly. "To what?" No one answered. We cleared the area and prepped for detonation. The tone in my earpiece shifted pitch, turning into a faint rhythmic breathing, the same sound we'd heard months before. Harlan raised his hand. 30 seconds. I watched the wreck shimmer in the pale light, frost glowing along its seams. At 10 seconds, the voice came again, louder, resonant through the open air. "Checklist complete. Ready for takeoff." Then the world exploded white. The blast rolled through the valley like thunder trapped under ice. Snow lifted in a wall and came down in heavy silence. When the sound finally died, the wreck was gone. Nothing but smoke and shards buried in powder. We stood there catching our breath, listening. Then Cohen's scanner crackled to life. The signal was still there, moving north. The coordinates shifted 5 miles, then 10. It wasn't gone at all. It was traveling, steady, deliberate, alive. We followed the signal north across a field of broken ice, the vehicles grinding through drifts that swallowed the treads to their hubs. The storm had eased, leaving the world washed pale and silent, a flat sheet of gray where horizon and sky fused together. The only sound was the hum through our headsets, a faint pulse that grew stronger the farther we drove, climbing and falling like a heartbeat struggling to keep rhythm. Harlan rode in the lead cab, face expressionless, eyes locked on the scanner display. "It's not stationary," he said finally. "It's moving with us." No one answered. Every man in that convoy had the same thought, that whatever we'd destroyed in the valley wasn't destroyed at all. It had simply slipped free. The coordinates showed the signal crawling north at 5 miles per hour, tracing a steady path up the ridge. "It's traveling underground," Cohen muttered, "like it's using the ice as a conductor." We parked at the base of a cliff where the signal peaked, a dark wall of basalt rising from the snow. The Geiger counter stayed flat, but the compasses spun lazy circles. A narrow cleft opened near the base, no more than 10 feet wide. its edges rimed with frost so thick it looked alive. The scanner spiked. Harlan motioned for silence. We advanced on foot, rifles slung, boots sinking in powder that muffled every step. Inside the crevice, the air grew warmer, tinged with a faint metallic scent like ozone and rust. Frost hung in thin strands from the ceiling, shimmering in our lights. The passage curved downward, then widened into a hollow chamber carved clean into the rock. At the center stood something half buried beneath snow, a structure of curved metal plates welded together, the same olive paint, the same riveted seams as the aircraft. But this wasn't a wreck. It was new, its surfaces unscarred. One hatch stood open, frost feathering its rim. "That's impossible," Cohen whispered. Harlan crouched, touched the edge, and jerked his hand back. "It's warm." The beacon tone shifted then, splitting into 3 separate layers. One pulse was mechanical, one was our own recorded voices, the third a faint whisper in a language none of us recognized. Cohen raised his meter. "It's not transmitting," he said. "It's repeating us. Everything we've said since we entered the cave, it's playing it back." The intelligence officer beside him murmured, "Shut it down." Cohen shook his head. "You can't shut down an echo." Harlan motioned me forward. We peered through the open hatch into a chamber lined with dead panels and frost-covered screens. At the far end, mounted to the wall, sat a smaller beacon glowing with that same triangle and circle emblem, this time lit from within. The light was faint, white, and rhythmic, pulsing in time with the tone in our headsets. Harlan raised his rifle. "Document it," he said. Cohen crouched with his recorder, but the moment he pressed the button, the magnetic field meter spiked. The needle slammed hard against the stop. The compasses spun wild. The voice returned, not through the radios this time, but through the air itself, resonating off the walls. "Altitude hold. Cabin secure." We froze. The sound had weight to it, like a man standing inches away. Checklist complete. Awaiting command. The floor began to vibrate under our boots. A deep hum built within the metal plates, low at first, then rising to a steady drone that shook the snow loose from the ceiling. Cohen backed away, eyes wide. "It's charging," he said. Harlan shouted, "Fall back!" We turned toward the tunnel, but the air had grown dense, pressing against us like invisible current. Every radio clicked on at once, even the ones powered down. From every speaker came that same calm voice, multiplied until it filled the cavern. "Checklist complete. Ready for takeoff." Over and over, each repetition overlapping the last until it became a single roaring tone. The light from the beacon flared from white to red, bathing the chamber in color. The structure trembled, the plates lifting as if breathing. Harlan's voice cut through the noise. "Move!" We stumbled out into the open air just as the ground heaved. A column of snow and steam shot upward, scattering ice like shrapnel. The sound rolled through the mountains, deep and resonant. When we turned back, the hollow had collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but a crater rimmed with glass snow. The signal vanished from our scanners that instant. Every gauge dropped to 0. We waited, listening, but the air held nothing. No hum, no voice, only the wind returning to fill the silence. "That's it," Harlan said finally, voice hoarse. "We're done here." The ride back south was quiet. Each man stared out the window like he expected the snow to move again. I watched the scanner needle twitch once, faintly, then settle. At dusk, the radio lit for half a second, printing a single word where the frequency numbers should be. "Airborne." Harlan saw it too. Neither of us spoke. By nightfall, new orders came through. All recordings classified, all personnel under radio silence. We left the valley without looking back. As we crested the ridge, the wind shifted, and for just a moment, I thought I heard the faint pulse again, rising through the static like a heartbeat still searching for altitude. Back at Fort Wayne, they locked us into quarantine before anyone had time to unpack. Officially, it was post-exposure observation, but it felt like confinement. Guards stood at every door, clipboards in hand, eyes always forward. We were kept in a prefab wing beside the medical hangar. Fluorescent lights that never dimmed, vents whispering recycled air. They took our blood every morning, our temperatures every 4 hours, and our statements twice a day. The doctors wore masks even when they smiled. Every question circled back to the same few words. Did you hear voices after the blast? Did you see movement in the wreckage? Did you feel anything unusual? Pressure? Vibration? Heat? I gave the same answers over and over. No, nothing. Just static. It was the truth mostly. What I didn't tell them was that the static had changed. Even inside those sterile walls, I could hear it at night. A faint rhythm crawling up through the vents. 3 short pulses, pause, repeat. The pattern lodged itself in my skull until I caught myself tapping it unconsciously against the bed frame. On the 4th night, one of the tech officers broke. He woke screaming that the tone was playing behind his eyes. When the medics rushed in, he clawed at his ears, shouting that it came every time he blinked. 3 tones, then a whisper. They sedated him and wheeled him out. None of us saw him again. After that, the questions grew sharper. The intelligence man who'd led the mission came in without a name tag and sat across from me. "You were in proximity to the beacon when it reactivated," he said. I nodded. "Did you experience auditory bleed?" I told him no. He slid a tape recorder across the table. "Play it." I pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then my own voice came through. Clear, steady, reciting coordinates I'd never spoken. Grid 3-4, north by 5-7 east. Altitude hold, cabin secure. I stopped the tape. "That's not me," I said. "It was recorded 3 days ago," he replied, "from inside this facility." He waited for a reaction, but I had none left to give. "Some transmissions," he said quietly. "Don't need equipment." They released us after 7 days, papers thick with signatures and warnings. Every page stamped classified, Joint Task Force North. We signed non-disclosure agreements that threatened prison for discussing unverified electromagnetic phenomena. Harlan stayed behind for debrief in D.C. Cohen left for Eielson within hours, hands shaking so badly he couldn't button his coat. I was reassigned to base communications, a desk job monitoring civilian radio bands. It should have been a relief, but even there, the silence felt wrong. The equipment hummed with a faint, irregular beat that no calibration could erase. Sometimes, while tuning the dials, I'd catch the old tone slipping through between frequencies, as if it were waiting for me to notice. I told myself it was interference from distant towers. I told myself a lot of things. Weeks passed, then months. Alaska thawed at the edges, rivers opening like veins. Most days were routine. Weather reports, supply relays, nothing more. Then one night, while logging a maintenance frequency, I heard it again. 3 pulses, perfectly spaced, soft as breathing. I switched channels, it followed. I powered down the console. It persisted, faint but distinct in the air itself. I sat in the dark, listening, waiting for the next sequence. When it came, it carried a voice layered inside the static. Altitude hold. Just 2 words, but they froze me in place. I unplugged the headset, left the equipment humming, and walked out into the cold. The stars were clear above the base, the sky a sheet of glass. Somewhere out in that darkness, the signal was still moving. A week later, 2 plainclothes officers appeared at my post. They asked for my logs, my transmission records, every scrap of paper I'd touched since reassignment. "We detected unauthorized output from this channel," one said. I told him I hadn't transmitted anything. He didn't argue. He simply wrote something in his book and walked away. The next morning, my orders came through. Transfer to Anchorage Communications Wing. No reason given. I packed without question. Anchorage was warmer, louder, full of ordinary chatter. The comfort should have helped, but at night, when the air grew still, I'd feel the hum again behind the walls, faint but insistent. One afternoon, a package arrived. No return address, just my name typed on a yellow label. Inside was a photograph taken from the air. The same valley months later, snow refrozen smooth. In the center, barely visible through the ice, was the outline of wings, a fuselage, the shadow of something buried but not gone. On the back, a single word typed in small black letters, airborne. I burned the photo that night, yet the image stayed behind my eyes. By summer, my discharge papers were approved. The line read, "Completion of classified service." No further obligation. I should have felt free. Instead, I drove south through endless daylight, the radio off, the static still echoing inside my skull. Sometimes I wonder if the signal ever really needed transmitters at all, or if once you heard it, it simply lived in you. When I close my eyes, I still see the valley, the wreck, and that impossible light blinking through the storm. And beneath it, the voice, calm and patient, repeating the same words it always has. Checklist complete. Awaiting command. After discharge, I moved south to Washington State, far from ice, far from the ghosts that still whispered through the static. I found work repairing shortwave sets and airfield transmitters for logging companies. Quiet, predictable labor that kept my hands busy and my mind half asleep. For a while, I convinced myself the past had thawed out behind me, but radio waves have long memories. One winter night, while soldering a transceiver in the hangar, the unit powered on by itself. No main line, no batteries, just a flicker of life across the dial. 3 short pulses came through, faint as breathing, then silence. I froze, staring at the meter. The rhythm was identical. Same spacing, same pause. I left the workshop lights on till morning. I told myself it was feedback from another frequency, maybe weather radar from the coast. Lies make good insulation, they just don't last long. A week later, a man arrived at the hangar asking about frequency compliance. Civilian clothes, government posture. He walked the aisles, touching nothing, eyes lingering on every console. "Any unusual interference?" he asked. I said no. He nodded, thanked me, and left. After he was gone, I noticed a new stencil on one of the storage crates. Property of JTF North. I hadn't written it. That night, I sat awake in my small apartment above the shop, the heater ticking, the city hum below. Somewhere out there, I thought, the signal was still hunting for something to answer. Years passed in uneasy quiet. I married, moved inland, learned how to sleep through rain instead of wind. We had a small house away from any airport or tower, but the silence never stayed clean. Every few months, the scanner on my workbench would light up with the same 3-pulse pattern, always faint, always distant. Sometimes the tone carried words, other times only that steady breath. I stopped recording it. I stopped telling anyone. Explaining made it worse. Then came a news report out of Fairbanks, an Arctic survey plane missing north of the Brooks Range. The final transmission from its transponder was 3 short pulses before contact ended. Weeks later, recovery teams found fragments of the fuselage embedded in the ice. The metal bore the same olive paint as the 1952 aircraft we'd found. No explanation offered, none possible. I told myself it was coincidence, but by then I didn't believe in those anymore. That summer I drove north. I told my wife it was for work, but the truth was simpler. I needed to see if the valley still existed. The road ended miles short, buried in gravel and runoff. I hiked the rest. The air grew thin, the snow returning in patches even in July. The mountains stood unchanged, silent, watchful, endless. When I crested the final ridge, the valley lay spread below, smooth and white as bone. No sign of the crater, no wreckage, just an unbroken plain of ice. I pulled a handheld receiver from my pack, half expecting nothing. The first sound that came through wasn't the tone, it was breathing. Then slowly, the 3 pulses returned. After them came a sequence of clicks that formed numbers, coordinates. I wrote them down with a shaking hand. When I checked them later against my old field notes, they matched perfectly. The same grid, the same point. The signal had transmitted its own location, asking to be found again. I buried the paper under a rock and walked away without looking back. When I returned home, I left the receiver at a rest stop somewhere along the Oregon border. I thought distance might finally sever the link. It didn't. Sometimes at night, when the house settles and the world goes quiet, I still feel that faint hum in my chest, like the memory of an engine idling just beneath the skin. I've come to think the signal isn't just sound or code. It's memory itself, something that remembers through us. It moves from wire to wire, from man to machine, finding new circuits to inhabit. The aircraft, the valley, even the static. It was all one continuous relay, searching for its next voice. We thought we silenced it. We only gave it room to grow. Now, decades later, the men from that mission are all gone. Cohen's obituary said heart failure, though half the report was redacted. Harlan vanished in a small plane near the Yukon. No beacon ever recovered. Sometimes I wonder if he heard it again up there, calling him home. Last winter, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a cassette tape, unlabeled, unmarked. I almost threw it away, but curiosity is its own contagion. When I played it, the room filled with 3 short pulses, a pause, and then that same calm voice I'd heard under the ice. Checklist complete. Nothing more. I burned the tape, but the sound stayed, echoing long after the fire died. These days I fix simple radios for people who don't care what hums inside the wires. I keep the volume low and the static quieter still. But every so often, when a plane passes low over the valley outside town and its beacon flashes 3 times, I catch myself holding my breath. Because I know what comes next. The same voice, distant yet close enough to whisper, altitude hold, cabin secure, checklist complete, and somewhere far to the north, beneath the ice or above the clouds, something hears me listening. If you've made it this far, you already know. Some echoes never die. The Arctic still holds its secrets, and some transmissions were never meant to be answered. If this story chilled you, subscribe to Caption Mimi, where forgotten missions, classified horrors, and military myths come back to life in the dark. Hit like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next transmission, because the next signal might already be calling.